Okay. You want to introduce our guest tonight, Steve?
I'll start by saying that for about 4 years now, Dan's been talking about one night out when he was in New Mexico at his remote site. One guy had some night vision equipment, and Dan said, "Oh, that's really, really cool. It was really, really great." And the problem is when somebody talks about it, you really don't get an idea of the power or what it can do. And apparently there's a guy in St. Louis who's got some equipment, but we can never locate him and get a hold of him. And so it's like for years, we've had this giant black hole of what's night vision all about. And so, as Dan has just said, we're always looking for meeting topics. And I said, hey, let's do night vision sometime. And Dan said, good idea. So about 2 months ago, I posted the 2 Astronomical League lists, one that's for master observers, and Jeff is on that list, and another for AL coordinators, and Marie is on that list. I think Cindy might be on that list too. But anyway, I said, anybody know anybody who can do it? And Jeff said, hey, I can do something for you. And I was just really excited to hear about it. And so Jeff is from the Ancient City Astronomy Club, and that's down in St. Augustine, Florida. And Jeff's an Astronomical League master observer, and he's done 28 programs. And he knows what's going on. Earlier in our conversation here, he said he's seen and sketched, I think he said, all the NGC objects. So it's like, holy mackerel, 7,500, way more than I've ever come across. And so he has, for how many years now? 7 or 8 years, been messing around with night vision kind of equipment, and he's built his own equipment and made it work. And hey, he's an expert as far as I'm concerned. And so Jeff's going to give us a little talk here on night vision equipment, how to get started, and what it would do for our observing. So here's Jeff Porter, and he's going to entertain us.
All right, thank you for the introduction. I am going to get this on full screen. And I know it works because we did it before. Okay, there we go. So there are 2 of my images right there. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak to your club and whoever else gets to see this video later on. And yeah, like you said, my journey in night vision started from a friend of mine actually calling me one night and said that he had seen some device, and I think it was in Sky and Telescope, where they had those cameras that first came out that you could do kind of night vision stuff, and so he was going to buy one. And so I said, well, let me do some research and see if they're really work or really any good or anything like that. So in my research, I came across, what in the world? There's people out there making these night vision scopes for like doing these tactical things at night and whatever, doing these battles after dark, paintball, and all sort of. I mean, there's a lot of people out there making night vision rifle scopes. It's incredible. They're 100 times more than anybody in astronomy would think. So I started saying, $2,000, $3,000. It's not really my cup of tea getting started. I just wanted to kind of see what this stuff can do, because there's like, maybe this was 10 years ago, there was like nothing. There was the Collins i3 piece, and I really didn't want to plop down $2,500 for that either, without really knowing what it could do. And of course, I didn't know anybody had one, or even at the Winter Star Party, I never could find anybody that had one back that far back. I'm sure somebody there had one, but so I never got to look through one. So I said, what the heck? Let me just look and see what DIY stuff is out there. So I started out, I bought a tube, which is I'll talk about these here in a second. It's Gen 1, and it was a triple stacked intensifier. And I built my first night vision device with that, with a 2-inch nose piece. And they're fairly heavy. Unfortunately, that's one of the drawbacks of it. But I ended up building 6 of them, and for my friends, even a couple club members up in what is that, Indiana, but I can't remember where it is. But it's right near Lake Erie. Why can't I remember the name? But south of Detroit. So they bought 2 of them from me. I mean, I just really didn't charge any labor. I just charged for the parts. And now you can't even find those tubes. you know, they went up in price quite a bit. You could only really get them from a place in England or New Zealand, and they're just impossible to find now. But then I, you know, just gradually got more interested in it and improved it. And, you know, so that got me started in night vision. So it's been quite a long journey. So, you know, when you guys see stuff like this, when you're on cloudy nights and you're kind of, you know, looking for something to do, when you see images like this, you're like, whoa, hello. I mean, gosh, you can do this in what, 1 second auto exposures? 1 second. I mean, yeah, they're big telescopes, but holy smokes. You know, I mean, that gets me excited when I see that. And, you know, as we go through this presentation, you'll see that definitely that's achievable. I mean, I don't have a 24-inch scope. The biggest I ever had was an 18, and I don't have it anymore. But definitely, I've looked through other people's scopes, and I've seen what they could do. In fact, the night vision instrument that I have right now, a guy had an 18-inch, and he sent me some of his pictures. So I know what it can do. And of course, these are all H alpha, hydrogen alpha pics. But yeah, I mean, this really gets somebody excited. And, you know, like this one's a little bit out of focus down here, but I just picked because, you know, I've done it for a while. So anyway, and then this also, now just remember that, you know, night vision is monochrome, it's not color. So yeah, you might get some, generally you're going to have either a blue tint, or you're going to have kind of a greenish tint. So the older ones have that greenish tint, and we'll talk a little bit about that too as I go through. Then this is the newer ones here that are kind of I just call it like a blue gray, but they call it white, a white intensifier. So, oh, and the other thing is I meant to bring out, says no process, basically no processing was done. So that's really incredible. So again, basic, you know, these are 17-inch pictures and all of that right here. This was an 8-inch scope here. This is an 8-inch scope here. So, you know, you can see what you can get to get some really, you can actually get some beautiful images. I will caution you that you can't blow these up a lot. Okay, so they look okay up to about a 5x7, but when you start to stretch it out onto your computer screen, you do definitely start to lose some of the detail, and I'll talk about some of that and the reason behind that. So it's there's a lot of material here, but I can go through it pretty efficiently. So I'm going to talk about what is night vision. Pretty much just want to give you a good background, talk about the history of night vision. I'm going to talk about 1-power night vision. Then we'll talk about night vision with telescopes. I'll talk about some of the additional functionality that comes with the night vision devices that help astronomy. And then I will actually talk about, halfway through, we'll start talking about astrophotography with night vision, filtered astrophotography, which you just saw some examples. And then what I have the most experience with is smartphones. And of course, you know, that's what I can talk from because that's what I use. There are definitely other ways I'll talk about some of that toward the end. And also we'll talk about some of the smartphone apps. So getting started, let's go into some of the history. And first we'll talk about what is night vision. So night vision intensification is a photocathode basically that captures the photons, which is this part right in here, and they're intensified electrically, and then it's displayed on a phosphor screen. So the phosphor screen is basically giving you that green image. So I don't know how many people have actually looked through a night vision device for astronomy, but I'll show some pictures in a little bit. It's not as bright as a TV screen or anything like that. It definitely does take away your night vision, your night adaptation. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But you do have a gain control on the newer ones that you can turn that down quite a bit, but it still definitely ruins your night vision because it is green. And the reason it's green is because that's where the eye is most sensitive. So I'll talk about that in the next couple slides also. So then you have, this is a modern Gen 3 night vision device right here, and has the objective here, which is basically designed to give it one power. And then you have your eyepiece or ocular here on this end. And the interesting part about these is also, unbelievably, they work on 6 volts or even 3 volts. So that's, I mean, it amazes me because I don't know what the voltage is that's going through that photo multiplier, but I would guarantee you it's probably, I don't really know. I'm just guessing it's in the thousands. Somehow it's multiplied. I can't imagine it's 12 volts. It could be, but it just seems to me that usually when you deal with stuff that amplifies, the voltage goes way up. The current could be low, but the voltage could be really high. So it's amazing you can take 6 volts and change it. Eventually, I'd like to find out what that voltage is that's in there. So night vision, here we have a comparison of the human vision from 450 nanometers to around 700. And then night vision starts to pick up around 600, a little bit south of that, and it peaks way up around the 800 nanometers, and then it goes almost to 1,000. And I drew in the hydrogen alpha line, so you can see that is it's picked up pretty well by night vision. So you can see already the possibilities for hydrogen alpha, and you can see why a lot of the pictures that you see are those H alpha photographs. And then of course you see this is infrared. So, but the other important thing is any kind of nighttime object that you're looking at that's over in the red area, orange to red, is definitely going to be amplified tremendously by night vision device. So thinking globular clusters, anything that has red in it, flat galaxies, anything like that. Something that's highly redshifted is going to get amplified. Generally, most of them are doing about a 3 magnitude amplification up in this area. So you can take your telescope and say, let's say it's a C8, and on the best night, you can get magnitude 14.9 out of it or something like that. So if you get a globular cluster, you're going to get probably about 3 magnitudes extra out of it. So look at there, you're almost at magnitude 18 on a C8. So it's pretty amazing when you start looking at the resolution and or what they can pick out, especially on globular clusters. So night vision evolved around the use of an infrared illuminator to enhance the subject. And as I said, they're very sensitive to red and infrared. And unfortunately, what we get is a monochromatic phosphor output, which has historically been green, but now we have the white phosphor, which you can see over here, which gives that bluish or grayish color. But I can tell you, once you're using one, after about 10 minutes, you don't even notice the color. Now, if you step away, especially on the green night vision device, if you step away and then come back to it, you'll see the green there for a little bit, but your eye kind of adapts to it. But what they call the white, you don't see blue really at all when you're looking through it. It just looks like a whitish grayish color. At first you'd notice the blue, but eventually, very quickly, your eye becomes adapted to it. So this is Gen 0. So night vision was pretty much came to birth around 1939. RCA and the Philips company in England came up with this. German army took it, the first ones to actually use it. But the thing is, they had to have this infrared illuminator, which was pretty large. I'm sure it had a mirror in it and everything to project. And they would only get maybe 200 meters or something like that. So, a very limited usefulness, but it had to get started somewhere. And I believe these were pretty high voltage, like 600 volts or something like that. And of course, like I said here, not shown is the battery pack. So it actually took another guy to carry that battery pack. You can imagine what it took to power this. It's pretty amazing. So, but anyway, things had to get started some way. Then we go to the Gen 1. So this is very highly developed during the Vietnam and Korean Wars. especially with, the methods of combat being in the jungles and things like that was really, this was made for that type of thing. So you can see, basically a standard rifle size here, and this is a very typical unit. And I would think that this might have been a triple stacked device right here because of the length of it, although I don't know. It might have just been because of the objective, the way they had it set up, almost like a telescope. So it might have only had one device in there. But so the difference here is they had a battery pack, so they didn't have to have those high voltages anymore. So that reduced the weight to probably, uh, probably around 6 to 8 pounds in general. So finally got it to where they could actually use it in a mobile instance, right? They didn't have to carry battery packs and things like that with them. So that's Gen 1, and that's the type of thing I started out with. Of course, I didn't start out with something that looked like that, but the innards probably came from something like that. So Gen 2 developed pretty much during the height of the Vietnam War and toward the end of the Vietnam War, basically for the need to have some type of a goggle system or something that you could use as hands-free. That's where this was, where it came into its own. So the basically, even though the device is smaller, they were about 2 times or 3 times more sensitive to natural light like starlight or moonlight than the Gen 1 and especially the Gen 0. So the Gen 1 was the first device that actually could work off of starlight or moonlight or natural illumination. It didn't need an illuminator. Now you could add the illuminator, but again, you're only going to get 300-400 yards at the most. So they quickly realized that that just wasn't the way to go. That it was going to be basically you're going to have to use natural light. So that's where now here you're they look like they're lightweight, but these are fairly heavy. I mean, the construction in that time, right, was really robust. So about 3 pounds, something like that. This could have been around 5. But again, your battery was in this little case over here on the side, There's very small little battery compartment. So they really miniaturized it tremendously. Then we go to Gen 3, which is what we see now. You see this basically the unit that's offered by TeleVue currently and a lot of the other companies. And then these are basically the goggles. And now they have goggles where they have 6 of these. So the person that's in the helmet, they just turn their head into, maybe 60 to 75 degrees off to the side, and they just set their eyes and they can peer right through another set of goggles over here on this side. So a lot of those were left on the tarmac when we left Afghanistan, unfortunately. I wonder if we'll see any of those on the market at some point. But so this night vision came into use in a big way during the Gulf War and really gave us a tremendous advantage over everybody else because nobody really had night vision except maybe some Gen 1 stuff possibly was out there, but people didn't even know to use it or how to use it or whatever. But our troops were trained, specifically trained, and they went out specifically to use night vision devices at night. So that was the first time. And the other interesting thing about this type of night vision now is you went from something that had, the Gen 0 might have been a couple of 100 hours of usefulness before it burned out. And now, as you went through the generations, now you have something that can last about 50,000 hours, 20 to 50,000. Some of the best ones are up to 50,000. Plus you reduce the noise levels and the amplification is better and all that. So we'll talk about some of that also and show you some examples. So for amateur astronomy, this is the Collins i3, which was the first device specifically made for the astronomical community. And like I said, this is the TeleVue offering right here that came out about 4 or 5 years ago, Uncle Al. So the Collins came out in the believe it or not, in the 1990s, it had the green phosphor tube, but now, and again, this was the battery pack on the side. So it was, like I've never even seen one actually, except in pictures. So, or used one or anything. But, I've heard a lot of comments, saw a lot of things on cloudy nights about them. And evidently the guys were very picky about the tubes, and they looked for blemishes, and they, basically kicked back anything that had issues with it, just like TeleView is pretty much the same way. So they basically get their night vision devices from a military contractor, but they're basically picking the AA devices off of the cream of the crop off the top. So, and that's another thing. I don't really go into it a lot in this presentation, but there are a lot of considerations when you start doing research on night vision about the the blemishes and other things that you might get in that night vision. So if something that's low price, there might be a reason why it's selling for $1,000, and it might be something that you don't want to touch, for astronomy. So you have to look at the blemishes and the condition, and it's, how do you know how old the tube itself is? It might be near the end of its life already. I mean, a lot of these are 10,000 hours or a little bit more, but if somebody left it on for a month in their closet, and they know that, but you don't know that. So it could be getting close to the end. So they may be dumping it. So you do have to watch. The price could give you a clue. So across the generations, as I said, the original, this is the generation 1. This is a triple stacked tube. So the tubes are about, it's hard to tell from the size, but there's a TeleView eyepiece right here. So it's a fairly hefty object. This is what they call a 25 millimeter, and there's 3 of them in here. And the weight was about 2 pounds, lifespan 2,000 hours. And the one drawback about the earlier Gen 1 tubes, especially when they're triple stacked, is they already had a bit of field curvature, but when you stack one field curvature on top of another 3 times, you're going to get a lot of field curvature. So this is probably more than what you really see when you look at it through your eye. And I'll show you some pictures. I mean, I took a lot of photographs with these. It's not usually that bad, but I suppose some of them are, depending on what kind of lens you put in front of it. But, it's just to be aware, if somebody is selling a Gen 1, you're probably going to get quite a bit of field curvature with that device. So then with Gen 3, we came to these very small, the Gen 3 is also available in a 25 millimeter, and I actually have one of those. And it also comes in, this is with 18, and the 18s are what they use in these devices right here. And that's probably what you want to look for because of the lighter weight. I don't know that you can really find any kind of 25 millimeter night vision device for sale anyway. You would have, this is more of this is one of my extra tubes that I have that I haven't built yet. So anyway, that's what the different tubes look like. So been quite a change over the years. This is the Philips Corporation, probably built in the late 1980s, somewhere around there, but there's still a few of these around. So here's some comparison between Gen 1 and Gen 2. And, the triple stacked one I showed you would probably be it would be about as bright as the Gen 2, because these are just single. Well, this is a single one here without the infrared illumination. I wouldn't even bother with this because no astronomer is going to be using infrared illuminators anyway. So what you want to compare is this row to this row. So a single Gen 3 tube compared to a single under starlight conditions, there's a big difference between those. So really for astronomy, the only thing you could really do was triple stack these, and your brightness is at least as bright as a Gen 2, maybe even a little bit more. So if you get a really good triple stacked Gen 1, they're actually a pretty nice, they're nice. The only problem is the big drawback is the weight. So let's see, I can't see my top up here, but this is, I believe this is, I'm talking about basically naked eye, if I can say naked eye, when you're looking through a night vision device or a night vision device, or one power views. And this right here on the right, and I'd say both of these, but this one here especially, thinking that of course it's probably going to look a little bit more toward the greenish or bluish. This is basically what you're going to see at one power. Maybe not in the center of St. Louis, but anywhere in the suburbs or getting out, you're going to get a 3 magnitude, gain off of most things. Some of them, 1.5 to 2, but yeah, especially under a dark sky, this is actually what you are going to see. Go to one of the star parties and you use one at one power. It's pretty impressive when you first look through it, actually. Then I said that night vision does have an application. I read different people on cloudy nights that said that they have macular degeneration or other issues, and night vision is allowing them to use their telescopes for a couple of more years. And it does, because it is bright. It's not as bright as a TV screen or anything like that, but you don't have to squint or strain your eyes, and you can just look right into the eyepiece and you see something, boom, right there. Especially when you hook it up to a telescope. And I especially like it for public outreach, because you can use your iPhone, you can set up a Wi-Fi hotspot, and other people you can share your images with other people, or you can even take it out of the holder and put their phone in there and let them take pictures. And it's just like boom, 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 the short exposures that you get on the normal iPhone, you can take it right off of a telescope. So it's really pretty neat. So one power night vision. So again, we're back at that same diagram here. So there's basically two types of night vision scopes that you can use, or night vision devices for astronomy. So the most common is basically like this one here, which has a non-removable objective. And the one, so there's this, I can't remember their name is AB, but I just don't remember what the AB stands for right now. But they built specifically for the astronomy community, they built a night vision device where the objective could be unscrewed. So it's a C mount on here. The threads are C mount. And they also there's threads, which I think, I don't remember if it's 42 millimeters or something. It doesn't quite fit a 1.25 inch filter. You have to have a little adapter. Of course, we have to have an adapter for everything anyway, right? So who cares? But anyway, in particular, this one's really, really nice to have, that has this, the objective that you can take off of it. So I'll talk quite a bit about that as we move along here. But the 27 millimeter objective, and this one is probably really close to that, probably a 24 to 28, gives you one power, the naked eye view. So these are taken with, this is mine here, and this is from another guy in England that I stole off the internet, but I give credit here. So these are basically one power with that hydrogen alpha, or you could actually use a H beta filter also. You could actually use an O3 filter, but the most amazing views you really get are with the hydrogen alpha filter, because it fits right up there in that nice part of the bell curve of where the sensitivity lies. So yeah, you don't quite see this well. And as most of you probably know, the off-axis effectiveness of the H alpha falls off quite a bit. So it's mostly in the sweet spot in the inside area, but this was a 20-second exposure. And I'll talk more about that too, as you already can kind of see the difference between a short exposure and a longer exposure. And this is because I had the gain on it turned up really high, and he was able to turn his down really low, and then tracking and doing exposure. So he gets a really beautiful picture. But, you know, this is not, you see more than this in a dark sky. Probably from a suburban sky, you would definitely see Barnard's loop pretty plainly. It's pretty amazing when you first see it. Then when you start looking in the southern sky, if you can see some of the large nebula that are down there, it's really amazing. So yeah, if it's of any interest, I put all the information down here, and you know, this is going to be available to everybody after the presentation. But this is a 1/4 second exposure, 1600 ISO, and you know, basically taken with my smartphone, and a hydrogen alpha 5 nanometer filter. It works okay up to, it definitely works really good with 7. If you have a really kind of a light polluted sky, you might have to use a 7. But if you can get a really dark sky, you can get a 3. You can get some pretty good contrast with it. So here it is on my 70 millimeter scope, and I've attached this one. This one here is basically prime focus in both views. So this is how I use it most of the time. So again, going back to, there's 2 ways that you can have it. You can have, if you leave the objective on, of course, you're going to have afocal projection is how you're going to have to use it with an eyepiece. I'll show that in a second. But these here, I'm actually able to buy, because I can remove that objective and I have a C mount there. I can thread on a nose piece and I can put it right into with a 1 1/4 inch to 2 adapter into my diagonal. And I find this to be very lightweight. And it also, when you start, if the light path gets too long here, you get some strain, and then things start to bend a little bit. And your pictures aren't quite as flat as they need to be. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're looking at actually buying a night vision device, if you want to try and use it for astrophotography. The other thing to remember is with this, the prime focus method, a lot of telescopes won't reach focus, especially large Newtonians, 1824s and all that. I find them very difficult. They just don't have enough out focus to get, you know, to bring it to that first screen inside of there. So sometimes they just have to use Barlow lens, or they have to do adjustments to their telescope. It might only, a lot of times it's only a 1/2 inch, like you're almost there. Everything's still blurry, just can't quite get it. You know, a lot of the scopes that I saw at the Winter Star Party, I believe, because the one from Teleview, the lens isn't removable, so then they go into the eyepiece projection mode. And that's how I think most of the people you see on cloudy nights are using it in the eyepiece projection mode. So this is the eyepiece projection mode. I'm just showing one example is Teleview, because they came out with a whole system that you can buy, in which I have. This is mine over here. So you can actually, even the smartphone adapter has a connection, and there's so where is the eyepiece? Right here is the eyepiece, and there's if you use a 40 millimeter, 55, or even a D light, there's a special adapter right here that goes right to the rim of the eyepiece. You take the eye cup off and it connects right to it. Then the night vision device goes here. So the objective of the night vision device screws down into this Teleview adapter. So here's the objective. Then the eyepiece of the night vision is right here, and this goes over the top of it and just has a little screw to snug it up. And then you've got your, so you can put filters in. You can either put a filter here in this section before the objective, or you can put it up here just before. Now, again, I'm only showing this in the smartphone mode because that's what I use. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it. But if you start looking at the length of this, the length of this light path here, and the amount of connections that are involved, you can see you start adding anything that's very heavy up here, you're going to get into some problems really quick. And, you know, a lot of times I say the weakest part is right here on your diagonal. So at one time, I wanted to really use 1¼ inch diagonals because you get a little bit more out focus out of something, or more in focus on that. But there's a lot of strain right there on that threaded area. So I found it just better. My peace of mind was to use 2-inch diagonal and just step it down, which is what I do. So anyway, this is the eyepiece projection mode. And a lot of people like this 55 Plossl, especially on your cats. And you can also, there's an adapter that TeleVue has that brings it up to a 67. So I think the largest true field that you can get is the 67 millimeter, which is their 55 2-inch Plossl with this adapter that you can put on the top of it, which I'm not showing here because I don't use it. I use mostly short focus refractors. So, all right. So going into some of the additional functionality now that, you know, astronomers would be interested in. So the older night vision didn't have gain control. This is really, you turned it on and it just depended on whatever the voltage of the batteries were. So as the batteries would wear down, the image would just get dimmer. So less intensification. So you always had to try and keep fresh batteries and the best batteries that you could have. But now with Gen 2, they started with gain control, but it never really was used that much. Even Gen 3, which is the newest. Now, lately, it seems like all of them have the gain control on the side. So you can basically use the gain control to go to 0, where you can't see anything, up to, which probably looks about like this right here. This is very high gain, but you can see the graininess that starts to pick up. It's like looking at something that's 8,000 ISO. But, you know, this is actually a pretty nice picture of an Andromeda galaxy when you think of it, just a 10-second exposure. And you do get a lot of vignetting on there. That's just natural to me. I kind of like it. I think it makes it look kind of almost alive in a way, because it just looks like something, it looks like what you're looking at through an eyepiece. So through the eyepiece, it does, M31 doesn't look quite that bright, but I would say, yeah, you definitely can see 32 and 110, M110 and 130 and 32 along the side. And you can see probably 2/3 of what this looks like right here. But then if you turn the gain up, you can get just about, from an 8-inch scope, you could probably, it would probably look about like this with the gain turned all the way up. And with the gain turned all the way up, it's not oppressive to the naked eye. You just see a lot of scintillation in there, and it just gives it more of a live view. But like other people looking at it, it doesn't bother them at all. Like you know, at star parties and things like that, the public doesn't bother them at all. They, at first, it's the color or the brightness. They're not used to that, thinking what you should be seeing through a telescope. But again, low gain, so longer exposure, it can decrease your ISO, and you can get to where the graininess pretty much is gone because of the low gain. If you really have to take short exposures, you're kind of limited to the high gain. Then you're going to get a lot of that scintillation in there, and that's what you're gonna, that's your results. So you can see here, definitely what the application for astronomy is going to be over here. They have an infrared illuminator. All of them do. I don't remember. I think even the TeleVue one has it. It's just the way it comes from the military. You know, not needed at all. Anti-blooming, that is nice. So if somebody pulls into the driveway or the parking lot when you're out observing with your night vision, you don't have to worry about it getting ruined, because they mostly, all the Gen 3s almost all have the anti-blooming, so that it dims right down. You don't have to worry about it. So that's a nice thing to have. But otherwise, it doesn't really help anything with the astronomy application. And again, these are both taken with that 70 millimeter that you saw in the other image. So here it is again. Talk a little bit more about astrophotography. So for those getting started, I recommend just doing the smartphone route. You know, that's just what I have found to be easiest, just to get into it. Most people have a smartphone. If you don't, you can buy. I have like 4 different smartphones. I don't think I paid more than $200 for any of them on the resale market. You can buy, you know, a Galaxy S10 for 150 bucks. They have a really good camera, and I'll talk about that a little bit toward the end here. But the most important thing is to get a smartphone with a 12 megapixel camera. So even the older iPhones, an iPhone 6 is just barely acceptable. Once you've seen what a 12 megapixel camera can produce, which is this right here, this is basically what like a iPhone 4 or something would show at the best. And a 6 would be better than this, but it isn't going to be like this at all. So you're going to definitely have to look for the newer phones. Now, I haven't used a 50 megapixel, but from what I've seen, they're not a lot better. I think they get their images by binning. I'm not entirely sure about that, but the 50 is definitely an improvement, and I would like to get one. But I'm pretty happy so far with the 12 megapixel ones that I have. So these are the holders, some different holders. And again, this is just personal opinion here. I'm not recommending any, but one of the nice ones is the Celestron XYZ. Excuse me. It has a 3-way adjustment. It's pretty strong all overall, but it does have a little bit of slack in the plane that tilts with the top of the eyepiece. It does, you almost have to tape it or put something to actually hold it flat. Otherwise, it depends on how you've got your scope tilted or what type of phone you use. It does tend to tilt a couple of degrees out of plane and put some of the stars at the edge of the field out of focus. So that's still probably the best one out there. Then the generic, just to get started and fool around with it. Yeah, that's one way you can get those pretty cheap. $20 on Amazon. You can get the XYZ is about, I think it's 89, something like that. But it's you can adjust the phone also in this one. These are very hard to adjust. You generally have one screw right under here that you move the phone in the X and Y position, or X and Y position. This one you have X, Y, and Z adjustments, which is where the name came from. And then the phone mate is also very nice, but it only works really with the system, the total TeleVue system, because of the connection between the iPhone holder itself and the top of the eyepiece. And this one is just showing it connected without having a night vision installed, but just the eyepiece and then the little clip or the little holder that connects to it. So it's a nice one. It stays in plane, and it doesn't have any slack in it, but again, you have to have pretty much that whole TeleVue system. The phones themselves, these are the ones that I've used, that I've kind of gravitated to. Like I said, I have 5. I've probably got another 4 or 5 in my drawer that I just don't use anymore, old Apples and stuff like that. But I found that the Google Pixel 4a ended up being one of my favorites. In fact, that is my favorite at this point. I use this a lot. What I like about it also is that it uses it has two apps that you could download, which are not available for the iPhone, which are the Deep Sky Camera Beta and the AstroCam, and I'll talk about them in a minute. Its native camera is also very nice. And again, this was taken with it right here on the Google Pixel 4a. So it's definitely my favorite camera. You get some pretty nice pictures, but look around on cloudy nights and see what other people are using. The other one I like is the S10. not quite as much, but it also can use the same Android applications. And the Apple, you pretty much have to get a 12 to get. I find the older ones, like I have, everything from 4 to 7 to 9, because we get a new one from at my work every 2 years. So I have them going way back. And even definitely the 7 is nowhere near as nice as the 12 that I have now. And even the 11 is not quite as nice, even though I think that was a 12 megapixel. I think it's just the way they integrate the camera. But the native camera is pretty nice. The only problem is with the iPhone also, you have difficulty to get exposures because there's just not apps out there. Now, as I speak, there's probably something in the App Store that I haven't seen. But Pro Camera X is the one that I know of and I have that does take up to a 4-second exposure. So this is the Deep Sky camera beta. And the nice thing about this one is it will take RAW. And you can do lights, bias, darks, and everything with this app. And it goes from, who's going to use 1/7000th unless you're taking a picture of a race car in the full sun. But it does go down to 30 seconds, and you have a really good ISO range that you can have, and you have a focus with it. But I like this one. Astrocam is my favorite, but this is my second because it's nice to have those raw images. The Astrocam does not have RAW. It's only JPEG, unfortunately. I wish I even sent them in a recommendation. You need to add that. But and it doesn't quite have as large of an exposure range. But for some reason, the pictures on every phone that I've ever used it come out better than the Deep Sky camera beta in general. Now, if you get this up into 30 seconds and then you use a low gain, yeah, you're going to probably get better images out of this app than you are out of this one. And I just like that it seems to have, it can take multiple frames for you also. So you can set up a program to take individual frames, and then you have a white balance that you can change, the hue and stuff like that on that while you're taking the picture, which, not really that useful for astronomy. The iPhone, like I said, the native camera is a very good camera on the 12s, but you pretty much have to get into the 11 or the 12 before you have a camera that I think you would be happy with, especially you guys doing the EAA. You really got to get that 12 megapixel. And the Androids, you all should probably try and look and see if you have a Samsung S20 or something like that. You already have the 50 megapixel, so you're all set for good application with this. So some of my photos, definitely not the best in the world, but I'm happy with them. So M45, that same telescope you saw before, the Savoni 70. This is with the Mod 3C, which is the one you can take the objective off of and at prime focus on the Google Pixel 4a with the XYZ and the Deep Sky camera app, half a second exposure, ISO 600, no processing. None of these aren't processed at all. So yeah, you get a lot of blooming out of it, but hey, I get that on my ASI Air also, or my ZWOs. They have the same issue, with bright stars. So then this is a 4-inch taken with the double cluster, pretty much the same setup, a little bit longer, did a 1-second exposure at 600 unfiltered. Again, no processing, so you get the vignetting around the edges. But the star images on this are pretty good all around the edge. There's a little something there. I don't know what that is, but they're pretty good flat field here. So you start getting a little bit of something showing up here, and this one too. It's the vignetting, of course, that gives it that different look. But I think with the Gen 3, you get this nice flat field. When you're in the Gen 1s and 2s, you're going to get curvature. And I think some of mine and later on will start to show it. So like I said in the very beginning, what you want to do is also look at taking advantage of the higher light gain at the red end of the spectrum. So globular clusters definitely get 3 magnitude gain. And when you look at M4 in a 70 millimeter refractor, and you basically resolve it right to the core. It's pretty impressive when you look at it. And M22 also easily resolved. This is a 6-inch right here. These are both 1/2 second exposures. And the only processing I did with these is just to enhance the, contrast. I didn't do anything else on them. So, a little bit out of focus here, but this is Omega, I believe. Yeah, the Omega cluster turned out pretty nice. So, distant galaxies, flat galaxies, quasars, anything that's reddened due to the redshift, distant Abell clusters. So at the Winter Star Party, I think 5 years ago, some guys were there and they were close to me and we were talking about night vision and everything. And I had my triple stacked thing still back in those days. And we threw it on the guy's 10-inch F5 reflector. And we pointed it over there at the, what's that cluster called? The one that's really, really distant. Just doesn't come to mind right now. Anybody remember? Really, I think it's the Coma, not Coma, but it's one of the really, really distant ones. Like the brightest galaxy is magnitude 16. Okay, so they go from, it's an Abell cluster and it's magnitude 16 to 19 or something like that. Well, we threw that on his 10-inch F5, and I said, okay, you have a look and you tell me what you see, and well, you keep it quiet, okay? Then I'm gonna look and I'm gonna count how many galaxies I see. Then you count how many you see. And when he got done, he said, I see 12 for sure. There's probably 3 more. And I go, yeah, I see 15. So we're talking about that 17th to 18th magnitude right there. And not that they were really highly visible, and they're tiny. They're like looking at a star that's just a little bit blurry, maybe 1.5 seconds of arc in size. But yeah, it's amazing the depth when you add 3 magnitudes to a telescope. It's just impressive. So yeah, flat galaxies, and of course anything with any of the H alpha, H beta, even the O3, not quite as much, maybe 2 magnitudes on an O3, maybe a little bit more. So definitely they're worth looking at, especially with any kind of exposures. They're really great. And here's some right here. This is mine with that 70 that I showed you. Both of these actually taken with that same scope. Whoops. So this is a 3-second exposure, 1200 ISO with the hydrogen alpha 5 nanometer filter. So yeah, you get some blooming, and this is not tracking. I mean, this is just basically altazimuth mount. I just use it for go-to. I think most of this is probably field rotation at 3 seconds. But yeah, you get some blooming, because of the brightness. And then the rosette here is also same thing, 3 seconds, just very lightly processed. You can see some of the star images on the edge there. Probably I didn't have it perfect focus on this one, but this is a very small scope. And again, you can see I had the gain turned up probably halfway on these, and that's why there's that background kind of a scintillation on the background of these right here. If you have a larger scope, you can turn that down and you can just get the contrast. Turns out really nice. So improving the photos, some things I haven't yet done, but I want to try it, is stacking. So you can definitely, even some of the phone apps, you can not stack them there, but you can definitely take multiple images and try and stack in and get a little bit of a deeper field. The only thing is the difference here is the stacking is your darks and your biases and all that are not going to help you get rid of the scintillation, because it pops up in different places on that image. on the intensifier. It's not like it's always one pixel hitting, you know, but it's all over, spread all over. So what you had to do really is turn the gain down, because that eliminates most of that scintillation. But I think it's, and I don't hardly see anybody on cloudy nights talk about stacking. I've taken a lot of videos also, and the videos are really beautiful. I just didn't put any on this presentation, but I think you can you know, break the videos apart into small exposures, and you could probably stack those too. So there's a lot of applications there. If anybody ever does that, if anybody gets into this and goes into the stacking, I'd love to see it. You know, put it on cloudy nights and tell everybody about it. Larger telescope, definitely. You get these things on an 18-inch scope, and you can turn that gain way down. Those people are getting those beautiful images, at the ones that I showed right at the beginning with the hydrogen alpha. There's some remarkable images. Again, you are looking at small pictures. You're probably not going to get much over a 5x7. It just is limited. You just don't have the pixel size on these night vision like you would on any kind of a CMOS camera. So another way to probably improve them, because again, remember, I'm using a smartphone, which tiny little sensors. You can get a DLSR camera to pick up off of that, you know, the eyepiece, the afocal projection. You could get a much better image, and I just haven't used it because of the weight. But I have seen on cloudy nights and other things on the internet, people have made holders, and they have done this. They have used the DSLR and have some really good pictures. Yeah, the con is just that it's heavy. CMOS cameras like the ZWOs and all that, I think, are probably the way to go. Eventually, even for me, I'm going to start toying with this any day now, because they're very lightweight. You know, even the little 120 mm would be something worth trying. I mean, it still has 10 times larger sensor than any of the smartphones that I'm using, and it's tiny and doesn't weigh a couple of ounces. So that's probably the first thing to start looking at. And then you start getting into where you can use your Sharp Cap or your what other programs you can start stacking live. So I think that's probably the way to go. And if somebody didn't want to go with the smartphone to start out with, I would say just use one of your 120 MMs or something small like that. And because of its lightweight, it's not going to counterbalance the scope too much. And just start trying it out like that. Just remember, the images are bright, so you would have to definitely turn the gain down quite a bit on that intensifier. I guess some final thoughts here. Like I've said before, once you get into that eyepiece projection, you get some weight there on the end of the diagonal. And, you know, like I said, putting a 120 mm up here is going to be just as light or even lighter than this, right? Some of the bigger cooled cameras or something, yeah, you're going to start adding weight, and then a DSLR is going to be just going to break the camel's back. So just be careful when you start planning on what you can and can't do. You know, you're still looking at something that gets pretty long, you know, right there. I would say when I'm doing that eyepiece projection, you're probably looking at maybe 7 or 8 inches from one end to the other, something like that. So that's a pretty long distance there. Something I found out the hard way. So my first triple stack, I burnt part of the phosphor by leaving the batteries in, and I had it sitting in my tent, and I thought it was off, and the batteries got left in. But even in a tent and covered up with dark cloth and everything, yeah, the next night I used it, I go, whoa, what happened? And then I realized, wait, I didn't have to turn it on. I left it on all day. Oh my goodness. So I burned a nice little spot right in the middle of it there. Of course, I have the probably the gain is turned up pretty high on this one here. But yeah, so I tell everybody I can just take the batteries out. Don't even, don't worry about turning it off. You can turn it off, but like now they just have one 3-volt battery in them. Just unscrew it, take it out. You don't have to worry about it. It just isn't worth ruining your $2,000 night vision scope. So And I think that's about all I had. I'll go back to the beginning if you just wanted to see the pictures again. But if there's any questions. So yeah, these are some pretty sharp photos right here when you think of the exposures of, 1 second or less that you can get in hydrogen alpha. But again, like I said, just remember, you're not going to blow these up to 8.5 by 11 or anything like that. You're going to get a 4 by 6, something like that. Still be probably pretty nice, except this one that's out of focus. But this was Lockwood Optics, actually, his article that he wrote. So is there anything I could answer? Any experience or anything?
Hey Jeff, this is Tan here. Just wanted to say huge thanks for doing this. I actually my buddy just let me borrow his night vision. It's a white phosphor, I think,
Mhm.
or white phosphorus.
Yep.
And I used it for the first time through my 10-inch Dob, and I pointed it at Hercules, and
Oh,
I was just blown away. This is something I feel like is an absolute must-have because
yeah,
I'm almost not even interested in doing just traditional deep sky photography anymore because just video from my old iPhone was
yeah,
incredible. All the photos that you're looking at, it looked exactly like that, and it's definitely a game changer. So this is very cool.
yeah. M13 is, and again, I mean, these are photographs, but to actually see it with your naked eye, looking right into that eyepiece when you're using that night vision as your eyepiece, basically in the telescope, it's just incredible. You just can be awestruck, especially when you start looking at it. And like he said, M13 is like, whoa. M42 is generally too bright to actually be seen well in a night vision device. You have to turn the gain down so far. You only really see the inside part of M42. It's probably stacking pictures and things like that. You can start working with them on Photoshop. You could probably get some good images, but just using it naked eye, yeah, it's a little better than the pictures get burned out a lot quicker, especially with the smartphones, of course. I just definitely think that my next step is with the CMOS cameras, and like I said, probably the 120 mm just because it's so light. It's probably the way that I'll start going. Anything else while I'm on the hook?
Well, thank you for the informative talk. I'm from Pennsylvania, and Al Lamperti in our club passed the information on to us about this. I've run 2 times into an astronomer that had a night vision system on about a 20-inch Dobsonian at a dark sky site, and he had a binocular viewer system of some sort, and
Wow.
the views of the Horsehead and Thor's helmet were amazing. The contrast was remarkable. It was a green display with a lot of scintillation.
Yeah.
But I never
Yeah.
understood what exactly he had or how he got it, whether he built it himself or what.
Yeah, I mean, you can turn this on to, like I said, I'm using a 70 millimeter and I have other scopes, but you can, with the 70 millimeter, point it with an H alpha filter at the Horsehead and you see the Horseheads right there. So it's pretty amazing. The propeller nebula. And then if you use it naked eye, you just see the California, the North America, all that stuff is just like, I mean, it's so easy to see. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you could see Barnard's loop, then you can imagine the stuff that you can see.
I think that's what amazed me the most is I just held one up to the sky and I image a lot of the sharpless objects, and I could just view one sharpless object after another, just holding it up and looking at the sky.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when I was at the Winter Star Party, I think it was the 2 years before Al came out with his, he spent about an hour and a half with me with my triple stacked on my C8, and he was just blown away. but I'm pretty sure his night vision was already under development even at that time. That it probably just drove him to just continue on it more and more. And then his came out 2 years later. But his was the first night vision that I saw that he actually offered like an adapter to use the hydrogen alpha filter on over the objective. I don't know why nobody ever thought of that before. I'm sure somebody did and he picked up on it, but as far as offering it, as like in his ads and stuff like that. So once that got out there, boy, all the astronomy parties mostly people started showing up, and having that H alpha filter is just so impressive. It's amazing.
Hey Jeff, so if we were wanting to get into this, um, would you recommend like a DIY, or would you just pick up one from like a tactical store?
I mean, you can go either way. You can build a DIY yourself. It's hard. Like the only problem with DIY is sourcing the tubes, and you don't really know what you're getting because unless they actually have tested it and give you the spec sheet that comes with it, it's the only way you're really going to know. And I don't know, even then, I suppose some of that could be fake. So,
I see what you're saying.
I say be a little bit careful about buying them. And if you're going to buy something for DIY, you probably better stick to $300 or $400
Yeah.
to where if you get something that ain't that good, you're not going to feel like you really got took.
Okay, that makes sense.
But you're at $2,500 for something off the shelf. And you can look and look and look, and you're going to find some for 1,700 or 1,600. But again, look at what you're getting, because you may get something that has a lot of blems in it. And like I said, that last picture that I took, that's a blem right there, basically. I mean, that's a really bad one. That would knock that one way down, probably $1,000, and somebody might buy it just because they wanted it. But you're going to get dark pixels and all sort of things going on. And you might even get one that just has a lot of field curvature to it. So you got to just be really careful if you're going to go. The market says $2,700 is what you're going to pay for a Gen 3 white phosphor night vision device that's basically new, has just been tested. That's just what the market is. It could be 3,500. The ones that Al sells are like 4,500, but he picks the cream of the crop, and not sure that it's really, I've looked through a lot of these, and I don't really know that Al's are worth that much more to me. I think that you could get unlucky and spend $2,500 on a bad one that had a lot of blems in it, or you could get really lucky and get a top-notch one for 2,700 or something like that. It just is a little bit of luck involved, but definitely go with somebody that has a spec sheet that comes with their instrument, if at all possible. And you might have to do a little bit of, you're probably going to have to do a little research on what the different blems are and things, or just go with a reputable company that you could return it if you weren't happy. So that's my recommendation. It's going to be $2,500. It's just going to be, if if you're in there for the long run, it's just what it's going to be.
No, I appreciate the insight. Thank you. It's helpful.
Mhm. Yep.
When I had talked to someone about these before, there were legal issues with exporting them and certain things. Do you know if that's still the case?
Yep.
Is there an issue if you have one and you take it to another country for viewing? Could that be problematic, or?
Yep. I don't think you can, actually. I don't think you could go to another country. Not legally. I mean, if they don't know you have it, I don't think it's going to matter, but you do run the chance of getting it confiscated.
Okay.
But yeah, it's military spec. They're all of them. Even the Gen 1s are basically all the ones I ever bought were from England, but they also have them in New Zealand. So you have to sign a waiver that they're selling it to somebody that lives in the United States. But yeah, I mean, other countries, yeah, you can't, like somebody in Israel, they just know that they're not going to get one. They're going to get it through a military channel maybe, but they're not going to get it shipped over to them. Or in Turkey or somewhere like that. It just isn't going to happen. So yeah, just be aware. I mean, it's not like you can't let somebody that's from Pakistan look through your night vision device, they just can't buy it from you and legally buy it from you. So it's military spec is all it is,
So question. So you mentioned this, these sensors are extremely sensitive to infrared, right?
Yes.
And so it's amplifying the infrared photons, and then when it hits the phosphor, it converts it to visible light.
Correct.
So it's kind of up converting infrared. So then when I'm looking at one of these images, the majority of that is infrared gain, right?
Yeah, but there's not that many infrared stars that are probably bright enough to see. But if you look at Orion, for instance, I think Orion looks different than what you normally see it. There's differences there. If you start to think about those stars, the brightnesses are different than what you see them by the naked eye.
Yeah, I mean, all stars are going to have an infrared component.
Yeah,
In
or
fact,
red, even red, just or orange even.
Well, yeah. I mean, Barnard, the curve. What do they call that? What's that big? The big curve. The nebula.
Sprung Russell thing? Is that what you're talking about?
No. In the Orion constellation.
Oh, the Barnard loop.
Barnard loop. Yeah, I don't know why I just didn't want to say that. Yeah, that's typically a lot of that stuff in Orion is red anyway. So, so that's what I was wondering, because the specs keep saying 3x gain, and I'm just wondering if that's because the infrared component is being converted to visible light, and that's where that large gain is really coming from.
Yeah, but you do have a lot of red also. If we go back to the curve here,
yeah, that's it right there. Yeah,
you still have this whole red area in here to the orange.
Gotcha.
You're still magnifying that quite a bit. It just happens to be the greatest is infrared, but
right.
How many stars are out there that are shining brightly in infrared? I don't really know, but
I didn't get a chance to put my thumb on it, but a thumb is 1, 2. Yeah, that's about that peak in infrared is about 3 times greater than that peak in the human vision.
yeah.
Okay.
It is, because like I said, when you look at globulars,
Yeah,
they look just like these pictures do. And you're going right to the heart. That's basically what M22 will look like in a 6, a C6 or something like that and this was a 6. That's what it's going to look like in your night vision device to the naked eye, with a little bit of gain added to it. Yeah.
thank you.
Can you, if I remember, don't you have an image of M4?
I don't have it on this presentation.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just know that it's in a really red field.
See if I escape. See if I have. I probably have a lot. This is my work computer, but I happen to have a few. Something's in here. Let's see. I think it's under pictures. Yeah, I think these are all. Yeah, there's M4 right there. But again, that's completely unprocessed. I don't think I'm showing it though, right? I have to share that, right? I have to go back. Where is my share? Right there. Now I'm sharing it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're going to see that in a C6. That's what you're going to see right there. The only other thing I don't like about some of these apps is you get there's these things up at the top. There we go. So yeah, it goes right to the heart pretty much. And there, you get to see the scintillation pretty good right there. So yeah, I think this was probably my old favorite 70 millimeter scope. And this is probably a half a second exposure, believe it or not, in a 70 millimeter. So just to show you, and then, not quite of a flat field, but some of that, yeah, if you're not quite in focus, it quickly loses its flatness. You got to be really careful. They don't have a very, they don't have much, there's not much give or take on the focus on these. It has to be pretty accurate to get it really good images all around. But I can tell you definitely, I don't know if I have any, let me see. I have some, these are naked eye, or what I call naked eye. Let's see. Basically just held it up in my backyard, which is, a really crappy sky, about magnitude 3.5 with the sports complex nearby. But yeah, I mean, that's what you can see. It's kind of cool. How do I get out of that? Go back. Okay. I was trying to see if I had any from my old scope. Yeah, there's some of this is a Gen 2 right here. I think that's a D-Lite 18.2. So it shows you it's just a little bit bigger than that. And I think all of these are in the presentation, North American Nebula, but it's not a really good picture. So I didn't put it in, but pretty crappy really. But I really just started doing H alpha with it about 2 months ago. So I haven't really gotten that far, but
How
so
much a full moon kill this?
how much will it affect it?
Yeah.
I find it affects it quite a bit.
Okay.
It definitely picks up on the background sky intensity. So light pollution and all that, yeah, you'd have to probably filter it with something, a UHC or something to get a decent image out of in a light polluted sky. But I think once you put it in the telescope itself, like with in my backyard, like I said, I got 3.5 on my best nights. It's a 4.5, and with a C6 or a C8, I get good images because it just darkens. The contrast is just so much on that long focal length. Without, I keep it at native f10, and they turn out really nice. Doesn't seem to matter. Moonlight and all that wouldn't matter at all. But yeah, these aren't made for planets or the moon or anything like that. Forget it. You're not going to get a very good image. There's just no resolution. So
now I find Celestron has one on their at High Point website, a night vision scope for $289.95 that they advertise for looking at the cosmos.
I think it's just a small CMOS. That's all it is. A little
Monocular.
Yeah. I've seen some advertising Sky and Telescope. My friend had one, and there's actually some in there. If you look around on YouTube, there's some that actually are color. So I think the sensors they're using are just like the EAAs, I believe, but they're just smaller sensors. But that stuff's getting to be, I mean, you look in the smartphones now, they have applications now where you can take pretty decent night pictures. I've seen pictures of the Milky Way taken with the newer phones. But what they're really doing is they're not taking an exposure, they're actually stacking pictures.
Right, and can you do that with this technique?
Yep. I really haven't done it though. I pretty much have taken single exposures. I haven't really gotten into stacking yet, but I see a lot of possibility there.
What do you think, Dan? I'm trying to. What do you think, Dan? You think stacking is going to give you exceptionally better results?
I mean, yeah, it'll make the things brighter, for sure.
Yeah, see how the center of M41 gets washed out pretty quick. And still, and what you're getting is you get that scintillation though. the stacking won't get rid of that because, well, some of this it probably will, but some of the brighter speckles and things that show up from time to time, like, sometimes this may not be a star. I don't really know if that's a star or not,
Well,
it may or may not be.
that's why I was kind of wondering if we've got techniques that can remove satellite trails and aircraft trails and noise reduction, then
Mhm.
isn't the scintillation kind of considered noise?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I would think stacking might help to denoise. But
Yep.
again, I don't do those techniques. I leave it up to people like Dan to.
Yep. Once Dan starts on that, I want to see his presentation.
What is the display size when you look in the, that's being presented on that phosphorus screen? What size is that?
It is, that's what I was saying, it's 18 millimeter or 25. See if I go back to the,
And how many pixels across?
I don't even know. I don't know that I've ever even seen that written anywhere. I'm sure that there's a spec there somewhere. Let me
Or
go back.
equivalent pixels, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Limits the resolution in the whole system.
Where?
Pardon, Dan? Steve?
There you go. So there's,
How many pixels are on that phosphor screen is going to be what limits the resolution for the entire.
And as soon as my brain started thinking about it after my mouth moved, I realized that that's more of a linear analog kind of. Yeah, exactly. That's not a digital image.
it's a phosphor screen.
Yeah.
It's basically like a TV screen.
Yeah,
Miniature.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Old TV analog.
Right. That's what I mean.
Now, what they're
Yeah.
calling Gen 4 doesn't have that. It's I can't remember, it's some kind of channel they call it. It doesn't have a phosphor screen anymore. Some of the newest ones, but it doesn't really improve it that much. You do get a little better resolution, and those are really expensive. They're around the $6,000-7,000 area. It's like, I don't really know that that's worth it, to be honest with you, unless you just got money to throw away, because it's like, just go with, a nice CMOS camera or an SLR when you get to that point. And like, yeah, it's a phosphor screen, but this is the 25. They have the 25 in Gen 3, so you would get a bigger screen. I haven't used one yet, but I do have, this is my Gen 2, and I have a DIY system. I don't use it that much. Again, they're just heavy. They just add so much weight, and it's just a little scope, and I don't have a big mount or anything. But if you guys have a big, some big equatorial mount that you don't care about extra 2 pounds on the end of it, I would go for trying to look for something that you could build that's a Gen 3, but with a 25 millimeter, intensifier.
Well, we got a 32-inch out at Bramwell 6, so that could practically be used. This is a projection lens.
Okay.
But yeah, the resolution. So yeah, if Bill Dubert or Mark Jones was here, they'd be talking about the resolution is the aperture on this. And then when you image this with your camera, your iPhone or your regular camera, then the pixel resolution is whatever your camera is. Sorry. Yeah.
No, your resolution is whatever that phosphor screen gives you. You can,
or one or the other is going to limit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
I mean,
so what happens? So what happens with a screen is the focal image that's resulting on that phosphorus. Steve, you're right. That's a linear thing. You have an infinite resolution, so to speak. But then when you photograph it with a digital camera, and see, in effect, you're laying that phosphor screen on the chip of your camera, so you get that resolution of the camera.
And then, just when you think about it, it's just incredible. These are smartphone pictures. That's amazing. And like I said, this one's a really nice picture. You just can't blow it up that much before you get grainy.
Right.
It gets grainy.
Right. Yeah.
But sharing it on your Facebook and stuff like that, oh yeah, that's cool. But Yeah, you're not going to be selling that picture to anybody. Now,
Unbelievable.
if you can take that and put that, like I said, one of those ASI cameras or, some kind of a DSLR on there, then you're just limited by that phosphor screen resolution. You're not limited by the chip anymore. That's where you have to start
Yeah.
thinking, is that what I'm going to do?
But you
I-
can't do projection. You have to actually have a lens on your camera.
Yeah.
Because your lens is going to be focused
Unfortunately.
on the screen. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's
Well,
pretty big. So imagine
mean-
using your 100mm DSLR, 100mm lens on your DSLR pointed at that eyepiece.
Got a lot of glass. A lot of glass.
Wait.
But I mean, these are eyepiece projection here from Lockwood. Some pretty decent images, and he wasn't no pro.
Oh yeah, exactly.
He was just farting around pretty much at that time. But
Yeah, eyepiece projection. Yeah. I guess I was thinking afocal, right?
mhm.
Steve, that's where you have an eyepiece and then you have your glass lens.
That's afocal.
That's
Mhm.
afocal, right?
Yep. So
I'm
Yeah.
impressed. Now I just got to be able to afford this.
yeah, unfortunately, comes with a price. But 3 magnitude improvement. Now I can tell you though, using it with your eye, just with no filtering or anything, it does nothing for bright nebula at all. Totally zero. And most galaxies, there's nothing. If it doesn't have a red component, like it's edge on or halfway edge on, or a lot of H alpha, like M101 is quite nice, because there's all those H2s in there. But if it doesn't have that and it's just a lot of blue stars and stuff, you ain't going to see any. It's just going to be same thing, except the thing is you don't have to squint and look for, oh, is it there? Is it? Oh, there it is. The wife can come out, you can see it. And now you can set up a Wi-Fi hotspot. You can project it on, you can have it on a TV somewhere or computer screen. And that's where it's really cool. When I have this at star parties, the young people, especially the iPhone, they grew up with the iPhone in their hand when they came out at birth with an iPhone. That generation, they love this. It's absolutely just straight beeline. They come over there when they see what I'm doing, and just to be able to capture 1 or 2 pictures, they're just ecstatic.
Yeah,
over it.
every time Steve set up his electronic eyepiece, it was exactly that.
Yep, same
Yeah.
thing.
He had a teenager attractor.
Yep, but especially when you have your mobile hotspot right there, and they can just take a picture, right? They can take your picture, put it on their phone. It's amazing. And if I take their phone and actually put it in there, then it's like a physical connection to that thing that they saw, and they're just like, wow, I like the greatest thing this year that's happened to me, like taking a picture of the Orion Nebula, So yeah, no, but if that gets them into astronomy, that's worth it.
Exactly. They'll curse you for the rest of their life.
They will.
Curse you! I've spent more than I can afford on this.
I spend that $4,000 on the 18-inch Dom. Oh man, that guy got me into this. This black hole. Yep. Yeah, but I tell him, hey, 4,000 for that Odyssey, that ain't bad. You can sell it for 3,200 no matter what.
Yeah.
It only
But-
loses 80-90% of its value. So that's one good thing, right? You
Yeah.
could buy a car and you could
Well, I was
lose.
gonna say you can get the same
50%.
depreciation with a brand new Corvette,
On a Corvette. Can't
Much
be
money
that
to
bad.
spend on gas.
Yeah. Well,
Into
we
the
just
dark
spend it on eyepieces.
Okay, an Escort.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. 50% drive it off the lot.
So you don't get that when you hook it up to your telescope.
Yeah, the only way you're going to lose money is if you drop it. Actually break something. But hey, my daughter, she has bought all of her camera equipment from Cloudy Nights. Because I once told her that these people, this audience included, they take care of their stuff like you would not believe.
They're always looking for next year's advancement in technology.
Yep. And it's just, they baby their equipment. It wouldn't have a scratch on it. It might have a little dust, because they're afraid to remove it because they don't want to scratch anything.
Yeah.
And she's bought the stuff and she says, I can't believe it. She says, I would never have believed that astronomy people would be like that. I go, yeah. I mean, it's optics. It's very important to us. So, yeah.
Well, does she bang her equipment up, her camera or anything?
No,
Right.
no. She's a photographer actually now.
Yeah.
But yeah, she gets those Canon lenses and things that people sell for $1,500. And she says she would never buy it from a B&H photo or anything like that. You just never know what you're going to get. Now they may take it back, but she says, I have never bought something on cloudy nights. And she uses my account anyway, but it's like, I've never bought anything on cloudy nights that I wasn't fabulously happy with. So that's pretty neat. So we are good people after all.
Well, those of us that don't use white light out of the telescope.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've always wanted to do is actually use a green laser for a finder, for a pointer or whatever, because it would be so convenient. But
it is, dude. I've taken off
like,
all my optical finders.
oh,
I use green lasers.
but
Absolutely.
it's just there's too many flight paths over Daytona and St. Augustine.
Well, you just have to watch out. I mean, that's
Turn it on and off.
Well, and down in Daytona, you should be a 5 milliwatt laser would be just fine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll look into that. And you're only using it briefly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, to point it right there, just bing. Oh, okay. Especially when you're doing your mount setup.
Oh, I tell you, you get a
When you
lot of
go
oohs and ahs when you turn that thing on and you slew across the sky and I see the beams across. And it's like, ooh, look at that.
All right, that's all I had.
Well, I would like to thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
This is just a start, guys. So, however, if you really look at cloudy nights, you see people using bigger scopes and taking a lot of nice pictures, but I really haven't seen anybody going into stacking and doing all that. Not that I have really tried to dig for that, and sometimes stuff is a little hard to find when it gets esoteric like that, but there's got to be somebody out there that's tried some of these other cameras and things with these. And if not, I'm definitely going to be doing it in the next couple of months. So I'll report back.
You can definitely see the problem with the eyepiece projection on a smaller CMOS camera. Because your focused image size on the plane is going to be, 28 millimeters in diameter.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
that 28 millimeters can be falling on a 5 or 6 millimeter chip size.
Mhm.
Gonna fall on a lot of metal outside that chip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to get, you're effectively going to get a magnification of the center of that phosphor.
Yeah, so you'll have you'll just see the nebula here. You won't see any of the sky around it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You'd have to have, and like I say, Bill Newbert and Mark Jones can definitely tell you what lenses you use between that to get what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I like to think that, because that's then, yeah, they tell you exactly what you need to do. Wait a minute,